Morning, everyone. We're going to continue looking at Luke 11, at the parable of the horse that wouldn't stop. You might find it in your Bibles titled Six Woes. So just to give a reminder of the situation, so it's Luke 11, and we'll be looking through at verses 43 through to 46. But Andy spoke a bit about this last time, and to give you a reminder of the situation, Jesus had been preaching or teaching, and afterwards, one of the Pharisees said to him, "Why come and have lunch with us?" Sort of, I'm inviting a few other Pharisees and teachers of the law and so on. Come and have lunch, and it was quite an interesting lunch. Jesus, my first thoughts of reading this was, this would have been a good lunch to be at. I think I've changed my mind, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But it was certainly an interesting lunch. They invite Jesus in. First thing he does is not wash his hands, not do the polite thing. And then when they sort of look at him a bit funny, he just lays into them and says, "Well, you guys, you wash the outside, but you don't care about the inside." And then he goes, "And look, now you do all this tithing, but you forget about justice and mercy." So it's all getting a little bit interesting, as I said. So we'll pick up at verse 43, and when we're now up to the second woe. "Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplace. Woe to you, because you are like unmarked graves, which men walk over without knowing it." One of the experts in the law answered him, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us also." Jesus said, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load down people with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." So it's worth spending just a minute thinking about the word woe. And we often sort of think of it as, woe betide you when, if you do whatever it is that you're not supposed to do. This is what is, the wrath and the judgment that's going to fall on you. You wait till your father gets home. Woe betide you if you touch that cake before it's, or, it's those types of, we often think of it like that. But woe, the word woe also carries with it an element of sorrow. And in other places, for example, in Revelation, where the same word is translated alas, it's kind of carries that situation. Isn't it sad that this is the case? And where there's a similar passage to this in Matthew 23. In that case, the horse was even worse. It was 7 woes, to stop it there. But Jesus ends that bit with that well-known lament over Jerusalem. "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I long to gather you like a hen gathers its chicks under its wings." It's this kind of, I wish this was different. I wish. And I think Jesus is saying to these people, you are people, the people who were there, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. These were people who wanted to serve God. They spend their lives trying to understand what it meant to be a Jew, how to serve God. And Jesus said, you've done this and you've missed the point. There's both a warning. You're doing the wrong things, but it's also, and you were so close to getting it right, but you tried, but you've just missed. If we sort of now look a little bit at what are the things that Jesus was talking about. Well, the first thing he said is, woe to you because you want the best seats in the church or in the synagogues. I think if we said you want the best seats in the church here, everyone would be going, yep, back row. But actually, in that case, there would have been, there would have been seats up here, and all the, important people would have been sitting on either side. So, we'd have the elders and would have, so on, and facing the congregation where they can be seen. Look at me, I'm an important person. I'm up here doing that. And similarly with the sort of greetings in the marketplace where someone, as they're walking down, you can think a little bit like, the local MP is walking down the street, people might stop him and talk to him because he's the local MP. It's that kind of, and, a bit like last week where, Andy, well, not last week, a couple of weeks ago, but Andy was speaking about how that they were tithing, and that tithing wasn't a bad thing in itself, but they had concentrated on that instead. Being honored is not a bad thing, and honoring people is not a bad thing. In 1 Timothy, was 5 verse 17, which we've been looking at in Men for the Master, it says, elders are worthy of double honor. Being honored is a good thing, but the reason why you honor someone is because they are honorable. They've lived an honorable life. And Jesus is saying to them, it would have been right to aspire to live an honorable life, to do the things which generate honor. But you are after the honor. Honor is something which comes from what you've done, but actually you're only doing the things that you think will get you honor to get the honor. You're enjoying the praise and those sort of things. And so your motivation to do good is to be honored, not to do good. Jesus talks about this on the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, don't be like the Pharisees who get up and pray in public so that people can see them there. Don't be, going around ostentatiously giving out things to the needy. Do these things in secret. Do them because they are things which are good to do, not to be seen to be doing it. I think this is something which, at the moment in our society, is a big thing. We, particularly with social media, you need to be putting the right hashtags on things, whether I stand with Ukraine on Facebook or, those kinds of things. And it can become almost I need to be seen to be doing these things. Now, standing with Ukraine is a good thing to do. I'm not criticizing that. But it's kind of, there's this push to really be seen to do it. Companies need to be seen to be supporting the right things and disassociating themselves from the wrong things. We've even got words for it now, virtue signaling, which is, you need to be showing that. But actually, it goes a bit further than that. You also need to be showing it, but not in a way which is just virtue signaling. And it's become even more legalistic. You've got to be seen to be doing it, but you mustn't be seen to be doing it. Yeah. So I think that this is what Jesus is talking about here. And then he says, you're like unmarked graves, which seems a slightly strange analogy. But, and while I'm pretty sure no one would particularly like to be called a grave if you came up to you, well, not if you're looking very grave, but if someone came, you're a grave, it's not something which would be nice, but it goes a bit further than that. In Numbers 19:16, if you've got that up there, it says, anyone out in the open who touches someone who has been killed with a sword, or someone who has died a natural death, or anyone who touches a human bone or a grave will be unclean for 7 days. So, and if you were to touch a grave, you become unclean. And what Jesus is saying, you Pharisees, you're like graves that people can't see. And they walk over it because they don't even realize it's there. And now they're ceremonially unclean. They become unclean without even realizing that. And really what Jesus is saying is you appear to be leading people in the right paths, but actually you're leading them into moral uncleanness in the way that you are going about all of this. I think we do kind of see this in well, I guess the way the Pharisees went. We tend to think of the Pharisees as the baddies of the Bible. They're the villains. But as I said, these are people who wanted to serve God. They went as really, really trying. When they say that they tithed even the little bit of their herbs in the garden, these are people who are making a real effort to follow God. And yet we see that where does this lead? It leads to them, in the end, plotting against Jesus and actually seeking to have him killed. And this is kind of the ultimate working out, if you like, of this, of what they are. They appear to be leading people in a right path, but they're actually taking people, without them realizing it, into a path of moral uncleanness. And then a teacher of the law gets involved. And at this point, my boss would say he forgot rule 2. Rule 2 for my boss is never ask a question if you can't live with the answer. And he has a rule 1, but I can't repeat it. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but every time I ask him what it is, I immediately forget it. But yeah. And here's the lawyer kind of going, Jesus, look, I realize this is a bit inadvertent, but the things you've just said about the Pharisees, well, they could be applied to us, but I know you don't mean that. Isn't that right, Jesus? Would you just, like to confirm that you don't mean us? And Jesus gets stuck in. He says, and you experts in the law, woe to you because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourself will not lift one finger to help them. When I was at university, I was a member of the Flat Earth Society. Now, I can see people are now thinking, oh, he's, a bit weird, doesn't believe the moon was landed on, probably into the Area 51 conspiracies. Perhaps won't talk to him about QAnon afterwards, those sorts of things. But I need to explain what the Flat Earth Society, or the FES that I was a part of, was. It was a bunch of some of the lecturers and postgrads who'd meet sort of about once a week, basically to eat cake. And the way we did that was we had a meeting which had, it was a parody of a formal meeting. So, we had all sorts of rules of procedure, etc. And in fact, we had someone called the Keeper of the Fiddly Little Rules. Now, apparently, somewhere there was a treasure chest, the Flat Earth Society treasure chest, which had a copy of the Fiddly Little Rules in it, but the treasure chest was mislaid. So no one knew where it was, although it was apparently there. And so we were reliant on the Keeper of the Fiddly Little Rules. And the Keeper of the Fiddly Little Rules would basically tell you when you'd broken one. So and then you'd get a black mark, and if you accumulated too many black marks, you had to bring the cake the next week. The other thing that was very important to do was if you went traveling, you had to send back a postcard but you were only allowed to use the first letter of each word on the postcard. So, these were the really important things that this group did. So one of the rules was when you were distributing the cake, you had to distribute the cake in the right order. And no one ever told you what the order was. They would just tell you when you did it wrong. So eventually, someone did tell me, actually, the order is the order of seniority of how long someone's been in the FES. Which, again, didn't help me at all because I didn't know who joined first. So I brought a lot of cake. But it was a little bit, Jesus was saying, this is what the teachers of the law are like. There's this whole huge burden of fiddly little rules, and rather than actually helping people to keep them, you did that wrong. You did that wrong. It's kind of, we've built up all these rules, and we'll tell you when you've got them wrong. And they're not really being helpful at all. But it's sort of, there's a bit more to it as well. Andy spoke last time about some of the rules, and he talked about the Mishnah, which was a list of a lot of these rules, and spoke about he went through the ceremonially washing rules and how complicated they were. To pick up another one, it said that they taught that on the Sabbath a man cannot carry a burden in his right hand or in his left hand or in his bosom, it's sort of tucked into his cloak, or on his shoulder. But he may carry it on the back of his hand, or with his foot, or with his mouth, or with his elbow, or in his ear, or in his hair, or in his wallet, carried mouth downwards, so it could fall out, or between his wallet and his shirt, or in the hem of his shirt, or in his shoe, or in his sandal. So it's like, here's the rule: you're not allowed to carry a burden on the Sabbath. And they've now said, well, this is what it means. And I mean, on one hand, how are you going to remember all of those things? You've now got all the fiddly little rules. But on the other hand, it's actually, we've made the rules, but we've also made the way that we can get around the rules. So as long as I sort of attach this thing to my foot and walk along, that's all right. But if I picked it no, so here we've not only created lots of rules, we know the way to get out of having to do those rules, but they're so complicated, you're not going to be able to do it, but we are. I think there was. I think at this point I was quite tempted to say, perhaps apply it to current politics and situations. It would have been very easy to have done so. But then I kind of thought, well, if I do that, am I in danger of doing exactly what the teacher of the law did? It is, we all enjoy someone, the righteous anger at someone sitting there listening, going, yes, you're right. Someone's laying into someone with a, saying this is what you should be doing, but you haven't done it, etc., etc. And it's we all enjoy that but then the bit where it kind of goes, oh, that's sounding a little bit like me. Is where you kind of no, now you're going a bit far. And we can be just like the teachers of the law here. And I think, thinking, well, I'm in danger of doing the same thing, of saying, Jesus' words, they are right and they apply to you, but not to me. I think, I wanted to say, well, how do they apply to us and to me a little bit? And I think it's very easy for us to take the things which are good in a similar manner to what the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were doing, and turn them into sort of legalistic things. It's like, it'd be really good, I might say, it'd be really good to spend half an hour each day praying and reading the Bible, spending time with God. So I'm going to do that half an hour each day. What about days when it's church? Does that count? Because, I'm here spending time with God, praying, singing. And what about prayer meeting? Prayer meeting. When we have a prayer meeting, well, that'll count. Some days I'm a bit busy. Maybe singing in the shower. Does singing in the shower count? Okay. I think maybe that's not quite, I'm not fully concentrating, so 10 minutes of singing in the shower will count as 5 minutes of my half hour. But if I do it in a prayerful attitude, well, as long as I do it in a prayerful attitude, because if I'm just singing other songs, that doesn't really count. And if I sing in the garden, well, actually, that counts double if I sing loud enough that the neighbors can hear, because now I'm doing evangelism as well. Unless you sing like me, and actually, no, that's actually negative, because now I have to remedy the issues of them never coming to church, because they'll never hear that and want to hear that again. And you can. I'm obviously being a little bit silly, but we can do that type of thing of, well, I set out to do something good, and now I'm into negotiating. Well, does this count, or does that count, or those types of things. But, I'd invite people to think about what that would be like in a marriage if you were, sort of, as a husband, your wife comes in and says, a friend I haven't seen for ages is in town. I'd like to go out with her this evening and see her. Is that all right? And you went, well, actually, no. Yeah, as we've, agreed, I have spoken to you and listened to you talk to me for 20 minutes each day this week. We've been out for our contractually obliged dinner this week, our date night. We went out and did that. I've washed up 3 times, and even though you didn't ask me to, I've sorted out all the odd socks. So I haven't got anything particularly on, but I was planning on watching that program that I recorded, and it's not really suitable for the kids, so I'm just going to sit down and watch it. You need to stay home because the kids need looking after. I'd invite the men to consider how their wives might react on that, So you're kind of going, well, here we were, we've set up this thing to spend time together, to talk, etc. And now I've said, well, I've done those things. That's it. I think at times we can be a little bit like that with God. But actually, the whole point of spending time with your spouse and going out for dinner and so on is to build your relationship so that you know each other. So that actually, when she says, my friend's in town, you know that this is an important thing for her, and you're able to rearrange your schedule to make sure that it can happen. You've recognized this is something that's important. Therefore, I'm going to go further to do it. Or also, yes, you've agreed we'll go out once a week or once a month or whatever, and then when that comes to that plan, you may find, actually, I've got a friend who's having a really tough time, and they need me. They need some company, and so on. And knowing that because you've built up the relationship with your wife, because you know that this is something which is one of the values in your marriage, that you are the sort of person who goes and helps out your friend, that although this was the thing that you've planned to do, it's okay not to do it. say this time, actually, there's something else more important to do. Not to legalistically have to stick to, well, we said we were going to do this once a week or once a month or whatever, so therefore I am obligated to do it. But to actually say, no, I know the heart of my wife is to look after and care for friends and so on. So in this case, we don't have to do what we're setting out to do. I don't need a get-out clause on this one because I'm doing what is in the heart of what we were going to do. And I think this is the difference where Jesus says, when his disciples were criticized for picking grain as they walked through a field on the Sabbath, which again was regarded as work. And Jesus says, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. When David ate the bread which was consecrated to God in the temple, again, it was, David was a man after God's heart. He understood what was the purpose of things. So while we can have things which are important and good to do, when they become an end in themselves, that's wrong. They're actually about building up a relationship so that at times you will actually not do those good things because there's something better to do when you've understood this is what the heart of God is and this is where God wants you to go. Yeah, I mean, for me on a personal level, I think there's also, and now I'm talking about myself. I'm not necessarily talking about others. So don't take this as necessarily being applicable to others. But I'm on a number of rotas at church, and sometimes the rotas all seem to stack up, and I'm on something every week. And recently I had one where, good, I've got a week off. And then I discovered actually there was a new rota, and I hadn't realized I was on it. And my first reaction was, didn't they know it was my week off? And then I suddenly caught myself and thought, if that's how I'm thinking, why am I on these rotas? What is my purpose in being on these rotas? Is it to, I am fulfilling my bit of service to the church, so therefore I've done my bit, and now you're asking me to do something more? Or, and it just caused me to question a bit, what is my attitude in this? Am I doing this because I think I am now earning my right to be at church or something like that? Or am I doing it because I actually just want to serve the church? And if I just want to serve the church, then I'm just being given another opportunity to do that, And the other bit, I was thinking, if I'm thinking I'm getting a day off, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm just going to turn up to church and just blob at the back or something? I mean, why am I thinking that I can come to church without contributing, even if I'm not on a rota? And for me, it just was a reminder. Think about why you're here at church. I'm not here to do the PA or to those sort of things. I'm here to serve God and worship God, and that's what they're. I think also just on that, some of the other rotas that I'm on have me up the front, like today. And, I'd like to prepare. I'd like to make sure I'm ready for it, doing a good job. And again, the question to me was, why? Is it because, and it's very nice to receive encouragement, so I'm not saying don't encourage people who do things, but is it because it's really nice when someone comes up to me afterwards and says, you did a good job on that? And the next time around I'm going I better be ready so I do a good job. So or is it actually I'm preparing because I want to be a part of the worship service together, or of helping people draw closer to God as part of our service. And just a reminder to myself of, well, this is what it's about. It's not about me doing a good job. It's not about me getting up and giving a good performance. It's about we're here worshiping together with God, and I'm just playing a small role as part of that. So I guess the danger in sort of looking at that and saying it's good to examine our motives is now it's a little, is Jesus just saying, look, guys, you need to do these good things, and not only do you need to do them, you need to do them for the right reasons too. You need to make sure your heart is in the right place when you do these things. It's a little bit, and I get to use my father in an example. My father was a preacher, and he used me in many, so it's always nice to have a chance to get him back, particularly if he's listening, Dad. But when we were growing up, our parents would tell us, it's if you've done something wrong, it's not enough to just say you're sorry. You need to really be sorry. You can't just say the words. You've got to mean them too. So I could be a bit of a ratbag at times, and I'd done something to one of my siblings, I forget which one, and I was told to say sorry, and I was not going to say sorry. No. Well, you have to say sorry. No. You have to say sorry. No, you told me I could only say sorry if I meant it, and I don't mean it. So I'm not saying sorry. And I think my father got a little exasperated by this time. He said, you'll say sorry and you'll mean it. It can in some ways feel a little bit like Jesus is saying, yes, you'll do all these good things and you'll mean them for the right reasons. But actually, that's not what Jesus is saying at all. Jesus is actually turning this whole thing on its head. And I think what he is saying is, again, it's a little bit like the marriage relationship of you do these things to build up the relationship that's there with God, so that you understand each other. It's not always easy. I mean, working through a marriage can be hard. There are things which you have to do which are hard, but they're about building that relationship so that you can, and the things that you do so that you can understand each other, that you can live out the values of that relationship, both within your marriage and more widely. I think Paul sums this up very well in Ephesians. So, I'll just be ending with this bit here in Ephesians chapter 2, when he says, "For it's by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of yourselves, from yourselves; it's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do good works, which God prepared for us in advance for us to do." The Pharisees were trying to earn their way into the kingdom by following the rules, by doing those things, and by sort of a very legalistic approach. They were looking to be seen to get the honor for those things. And Paul's saying, no, it's not at all by works that we've been saved. We've been saved by grace. And there's no boasting in that. We can't be sitting up saying, look, I've done this, I've done that. We're just being brought into this. And why do we do good works? Because we're God's handiwork. He's created them for us to do in advance. Jesus isn't saying, don't, or Paul is not saying those things aren't important. They are, but they flow out of what God has created us to do, not the reason that we are trying to earn our way into the kingdom. And this is where the Pharisees and the teachers of the law had missed it. They were trying to do this so that they would get the honor, so that they would, be righteous people. Whereas actually, no, by grace we have been made righteous through Christ. Now we live that out by doing the good works that God has created us to do. Yeah, so